Man, hats off to Harris Heller and the guys at Stream Beats because they create some really great stuff for free. And I just got to shout them out. Any music that you hear on the stream is by them. And, like, I kind of tend to stick to, like, one playlist for this stream, but, like, there's so many more. Like, a whole bunch out there. So, quick shout out to those guys for creating these awesome little pieces of music, man. I love it. Speaking of which, let's go ahead and slow it down a little bit. So I feel like we need some flute music. Flute Lord of the Rings music for the Woke of the Rings. Damn you, DMCA. Dude, Is it DMCA to actually play, like, the knockoff stuff with, like, recorders? You remember, like, the Titanic one? Somebody played, like, that Titanic song, and they just kind of recorded him playing, like, a recorder over it. Y'all remember that? That's, like, internet history. Like legend. Internet legend. Still, or the Jurassic Park one, too. They did the same thing with Jurassic Park themes. There just needs to be an entire album of bad, like, recorder or flute music played over these, like, epic tracks, in my opinion. I would use them constantly for everything. Doesn't matter what it is. But how are you guys doing today? Welcome. Welcome to the stream, guys. Happy that you're here. By the way, we've got a big latency issue that I'm still trying to figure out. Yeah, I remember. I don't know, but we've got a latency thing going on here. So if I talk a while, I'm trying to figure out how to make it work. Again, new stream, new problems. Trying to figure out how to make it less. So, but the latency issue. So if I'm talking and, I say something, you guys might actually see it 10 seconds later. I've got it set to ultra low latency, but we'll work it out in the future here. But in any case, let's get started today. What's up, John? Howdy, man. Welcome to the stream. Welcome to the stream. Today, I want to get nerdy. I mean, I guess all politics is kind of nerdy. But, like, if there's one thing that I get really excited about, release the McCracken! Thank you so much for the subscription. Really appreciate it. By the way, like the stream. If you haven't done it yet, like the stream. Let's play with the algorithm a little bit. Make it work in our favor, at least as much as we possibly can get it to here on YouTube. Doing all right. Good to hear. So I guess all politics is nerdy, but I get really like upset. Not upset. You know what? That's a bad word to use. I don't get upset. I get frustrated. Really frustrated when it comes to the wokeification of our culture. I hate it. I can't stand it. And it's blatant politicalization on something that we should, as a culture, hold as untouchable. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that every single story has to maintain, like, sameness throughout the generations. Like, that changes happen over time naturally. But this is like the way that woke culture has injected. It's almost like a blitzkrieg of pop culture. Our escapism has gotten to a point where it's not safe at all from political people trying to inject their politics into it. Woke culture being the worst of these people. 100% worst of these people. You see it everywhere. It doesn't matter where you go. If it's, it could be in a video game, it could be in a movie or a television show, it could be this, like, sports that you enjoy. Remember that for a couple of years, the NFL was subject to some of the worst racism I've ever seen. And I'm not talking about racism like, as it's popular, like the media tries to portray it. Like they were fighting racism. No, they were going out and being insanely racial to the point of supremacy. When it came to things like Black Lives Matter, Colin Kaepernick was pushing all this nonsense, and of course it ended up being a grift, like most stuff is that has to do with, racial advocacy. If you're trying to push, look, does the United States have its problems? Absolutely. Is racism among those problems? Yes, there are some racists out there, absolutely, but the amount of non-racists out there completely outweighs by a vast majority. Like when was the last time you actually saw a Ku Klux Klan member met one? When was the last time you legitimately ran into a white supremacist? I've run into a grand total of 2 in my entire life. 2 white supremacists in my entire life. And they were idiots. Complete and total idiots. I mean, like, I'm surprised that they put their pants on right. Idiots. Okay? But if you were to listen to the media, there is this entire swath of the nation that is just all about racism. And they're trying to de-racist this country by being racist. They're trying to point at, namely white people, but it changes from time to time. Namely white people, and they say, all the racism in this country is their fault. And we need to start working to decolonize the United States or culture in general. And so you have some absurd things start to happen in our popular culture because they think that if they can normalize their politics and pop culture, that we'll just accept their reasoning and accept their I want to say their complete authority on everything. And if you disagree with it, they call you a racist. They say, well, if it shouldn't matter if we're doing X, Y, and Z. Like, let's say, it doesn't matter if we're race swapping Anne Boleyn for a black woman. And if you do care about that, then you're clearly a racist if race matters that much to you. Yet these are the same people that if you were to race swap, a Madam C.J. Walker or Rosa Parks with like Benedict Cumberbatch, they would lose their minds. And it's not racist to bring up the fact that some characters that are being, race swapped or gender swapped or whatever swapped, it's not racist or sexist or anything to bring up the fact that it does not fit. It doesn't fit if you make a character who, previously was in the story completely feminine and embodied feminine, like the feminine energy of women, not feminism, femininity. And then turn her into some swashbuckling badass. Well, it's out of her character. It doesn't match. But they have to do that because they want to inject feminism. This is the wokeification of our culture in order to push politics. It is blatantly political. And pointing that out doesn't make you racist. Pointing that out doesn't make you sexist. It doesn't make you bigoted. If you had a movie about 1400s Bohemia, and, there is a king who is going to war with another kingdom, and he's, all right, I'm going to gather my army. And then suddenly, out of the blue, he jumped into a helicopter, grabbed his M4, 1400s Bohemia, and started mowing down his enemies from the air. You would be like, wow, insanely out of place. That doesn't make any sense, and it's taking me out of the movie or the show. Would it be helicopterist of you to say, well, I don't think helicopters belong there? I mean, they weren't there back then. It's just, it's a little out of place. It kind of takes you out. The story stops being believable. It's not bad to point that out. Yet it seems to be bad or racist or wrong or bigoted or whatever to have to point out the obviousness. There is a logic to every world that someone creates, or at least any good world that someone creates. The logic being the rules of the realm. The way that someone writes the rules of the realm. Here is, how these characters behave. Here is how this race in this world behaves. Here is how the elements in this world behaves. All of this follows a logic. If you break that logic, you break the story. Tolkien, J.R.R. Tolkien, one of the greatest fantasy writers of all time, if not the greatest, has a logic to Middle-earth. Amazon is coming in and they are attempting to break that logic by taking characters that he created, races that he created, and just starting to inject modernity into them. And people are mad. And they're not mad because they're racist. They're not racist. They're not mad because they're sexist. They're not sexist. Because they're sexist. They're not sexist at all. Yet, the media seems to want to paint them as such. And it's a little stupid for them to do that. And I think that over the course of time, they have... Here's the thing. For a while, that kind of thing worked to shut people up, or to at least get crowds of people to kind of turn away and be like, well, I don't want to listen to them. I'm going to enjoy this program or this retelling or whatever it is as a non-racist. I'm going to prove I'm not racist by enjoying this. But over the course of time now, it's getting so ridiculous. And the vitriol from these woke leftists that are in charge of this big stage has become so overt that people are starting to go, no, this is wrong. You're taking one of my favorite things that I grew up with, and you are bastardizing it for your politics. And that's okay to point out. I was just watching a Nerdrotic clip. Thanks, Red, for turning me on to that. Nerdrotic's awesome. I love the guys at Nerdrotic. I watch them almost religiously. It makes you pretty much sane at this point. Yeah, it does. It does. It's sad that we are at this point, but I kind of wanted to cover this. The media is getting desperate in its defense of the woke Lord of the Rings. Today, there was an article from the Den of Geeks that was released. And it was first covered by Bounding Into Comics. Shout out to them as well. They are really awesome at covering this stuff. I go to Bounding Into Comics a lot. But I wanted to read this to you because... but not my article. My article right now covering the Den of Geeks article is on redstate.com right now. Go to redstate.com. Or you can just right now you can just follow along with me, or if you want, go to it after. Go to it anytime. Make it your homepage. I don't know, but I'm not going to read that. What I want to read is the article itself from the Den of Geeks, or as Nerdrotic calls it, the Den of Activists. Lord of the Rings. The Rings of Power. Why fandom has to embrace change. Right off the bat, I just want to tackle this because it drives me crazy. Why fandom has to embrace change. Why do we have to embrace the change that you want? I just want to ask, I want to put that question out there. What if I were to create some sort of change to Lord of the Rings? Would you have to embrace it? The change that you would say no, of course. The change that they are saying that we have to embrace is their change. We have to embrace it. Has to. Intransigent and reactionary fandom is nothing new, but some responses to the Lord of the Rings of Power trailer show how damaged the culture has become. So he's setting this up as an argument against the critics who are already coming forward and pounding on the Lord of the Rings. This new woke Lord of the Rings. And to be clear, this new woke Lord of the Rings, that if you have not seen what I'm talking about, this new woke Lord of the Rings contains a lot of out of character things. Galadriel, for instance, for those of you who are familiar with the work, Galadriel was the peak of femininity. She was feminine power. All right, everything about her just radiated this womanhood that she didn't have to pick up a knife. She didn't have to pick up a sword. She didn't have to be an action hero. If you walked into the room, she was so powerful that you would literally just kind of cower away from her. Like it's that is how she was. But she was never an action hero. She never raised her fist. She was peak femininity. She was gentle. She was kind. But there was a fierceness behind that. That was the magic of Galadriel. That's what made her such an interesting character. Now, according to Amazon, she is this feminist soldier. That doesn't seem to fit her character at all. It's weird. It's really weird. Dwarves were they follow a very specific line of traits, and now all of a sudden we have black dwarves, we have black hobbits, we have black this and that. Now, is race swapping really bad? No, not necessarily. But according to some of the interviews that I've been reading and some of the things that people have been saying, race does become an issue amongst the hobbits. Why? Why do we need that? That has nothing to do with it. If they had just done an insertion of maybe black hobbits and called it a day, that would have been one thing. I wouldn't have cared. But now they're making it a racial issue. And then if you try to bring up the fact, well, why are you doing that? Well, why? Why do you care? Are you a racist? No. But let me just go ahead and dive into this. They're right. We need to embrace change, changing it back to how it was before they got their gritty mitts on it. Exactly. In response to the trailer for Amazon's new Lord of the Rings series, there has been a negative reaction based on the fact that not everyone in the series is a white man. Not true. That's not the issue. If it does not fit, yes, it's a little strange. It's a little strange. For instance, and I'm just going to be logical here, black dwarves don't make any sense. Dwarves are creatures that reside under the ground primarily. They spend most of their time underground. Logically, it would be weird for any of them to be black-skinned, to have increased melanin levels. Is that racist to point out? No, it's just logic. But also, Tolkien didn't write them that way. So that's what they're pointing out. But he's taking that and going, oh, well, they're mad because it's not all full of white men. No, that's not what we said. You're bypassing what we said immediately. Sure, there have been other negative reactions too, but they've trampled by review bombing rage. In particular, a lot of people have been, quote, posting a quote attributed to Tolkien to highlight their disgust. Evil is not able to create anything new. It can only distort and destroy what has been invented or made by the forces of good. So what he's referring to is if you go to the YouTube right now for the Lord of the Rings Amazon, actually, I don't even know if they turned comments off yet. I would be surprised if they're still there. But on the Lord of the Rings, Woke of the Rings Amazon trailer, that comment, that quote from Tolkien can be seen in many different languages for as far as the eye can see. Which is, frankly, colossally lacking in self-awareness, rich coming from Andrew Blair, who wrote this article. The Rings of Power is an adaptation of the written word into a visual medium made in the third decade of the 21st century. It is not going to match books written in the middle of the 20th century in the same way as Peter Jackson's films do not match the books. Adaptations are affected by the change in medium, and the context creative decisions are made in. They do not alter the original text and often increase its availability. So I see this excuse a lot. Peter Jackson, when he made the Lord of the Rings movies, he had to change some stuff in the book. That is true. He did. There were some things that had to be altered, which is completely fine. All right. But he was also making a movie. And for the sake of story, he had to alter some things in order to make it fit into 3 movies. Because, if you've never read The Lord of the Rings, there's a lot of information there. All right, Tolkien would go into detail about little things, and so some of that stuff had to go. There were some things that just, if that went, then some things had to be altered within the story for it to make sense, which is fine. It wasn't changed so badly that it took people out of Middle-earth. So there's changes that you can make that are fine. There's a line that you don't cross, and if you stay below that line, you're fine. But what was being bypassed here is the fact that we have a Lord of the Rings that is being changed overtly and for political reasons. 20 years ago, there was a similar backlash, including from a teenage me when Jackson's films made Arwen a more prominent character than in the books. Looking back, I realized my objections were based on ignorance of Tolkien's appendices and of the adaptation process in general. Unexamined sexism and entitlement. Bro, he is taking the lash to his own back right here. He's like, I'm sorry. Psh, psh. Fan reactions have undoubtedly become more extreme since Jackson's Lord of the Rings film trilogy was released, and they started off aggressive. The positives that can come from fandom, communities, connections, creativity don't counteract its negative sides, ignoring the increasingly destructive elements with a kind of toxic positivity. Amounts to a suspension of critical engagement and an unwillingness to process difficult truths. Okay, this is oozing hubris right off the bat. Don't counteract its negative sides. Okay, well, here's the thing about fandoms. The real fandom is a good thing, and it is the soul of the property or the franchise or the story. Within the fandom is the soul of the story. These are the people who go out and they cosplay, they write all sorts of reviews and introspections and all sorts of stuff, right? They are the ones who watch this every year, who read this every year. They know what they're talking about when it comes to Lord of the Rings. They know it. But he's already talking about the destructive elements with a kind of toxic positivity. A toxic positivity, which is basically, it's a suspension of critical engagement and an unwillingness to process difficult truths. So already he's saying that this toxic positivity that these fans have about this property, about Lord of the Rings, stops them from being critical of it and processing difficult truths. Process difficult. What does that even mean? Process difficult truths. Well, I'll tell you what he's actually talking about. He's trying to make it already seem like, hey guys, this is typical of the social justice, wokeifying this. Hey guys, that thing that you loved growing up, it's actually like racist and sexist. It's actually bigoted. It's actually horrible. These are the difficult truths that we're supposed to process. There was a quote by Anita Sarkeesian, who was the kind of like one of the antagonists within the Gamergate movement, I should say. And she said herself at one point in time while being like up on stage and doing her thing, everything is, oh, you know what? The chat is just not, hang on. Sorry, guys. There we go. What's up, Badger? Welcome. What was I? Oh, yeah. She was saying to the crowd, oh, everything is sexist, everything is racist, everything is this and that and la 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 la, and it is your job to point it out. That is pretty much how the woke operate. They see the problem in everything. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be super innocent, but they will find a way to point out how it is sexist or how it is racist, and they will lie if they have to. So they're looking at the Lord of the Rings and they're analyzing it and they're trying to find ways to make it racist so that they can come in and say, oh, well, here's how to make it non-racist. And the only way to make it non-racist is by me plugging in my my modern sentimentalities into it. That is the processing of difficult truths that he's discussing here. I'll continue. There's a sense of a fan's identity being tied up in something make-believe, making a criticism of their favorite stories or criticism of them as people. Well, yeah. What does that even mean? Making a criticism of their favorite stories, a criticism of them as people. Here's the thing. If you say to them, hey, that thing that you like is problematic in some way, shape, or form, and you like it, automatically that's going to put somebody on the defensive. Why do you like this racist thing? Well, hang on. That's not... First of all, this thing isn't racist. But now you're trying to tie me and my fandom to the fact that it is? Or you think it is? Gee, that makes a lot of... That would make me mad. Of course it would make you mad. But then also, the thing he is completely bypassing... Bro, you are trying to rip apart something that is really great so that you can pretend that you need to come in and help it. For example, despite Tolkien's vehement anti-racism, there are issues with his mythology. There it is, right there. What did I just say? His equating the dwarves with Jews, including linguistically, was intended positively as a representation of dispossessed people, but he also described their, quote, tremendous love of the artifact in a 1965 BBC interview, which is a common anti-Semitic trope. Some people regard pointing this out as a personal attack, an attempt to stop them from enjoying something they love. As with fandom, ignoring the negatives of something doesn't stop them from being present. Here's the thing. At no point in time was Tolkien anti-Semitic. He wasn't. He meant nothing. I mean, he does, for all intents and purposes, say that, but here's the problem with that. He is still calling it problematic. And I think intention has a lot to do with what is and isn't racist. What is considered racist today was not considered racist then. And I want to add this. Tolkien was a big Nazi guy. Big anti-Nazi guy. He was disgusted with anti-Semitism. So if he's disgusted with anti-Semitism and yet he was taking his real life, it's like some real life inspiration in the creation of something else, but does not mean that the dwarves were the Jews. That's not what he's saying. And is some of it, like, today considered really bad? Okay, fine. Things change. We evolve as a society. But this is basically trying to say that Tolkien was anti-Semitic despite himself. Despite his beliefs. You can't put that on people. The sense of fan ownership and attachment isn't a new phenomenon. In 1893, 20,000 readers of The Strand magazine canceled their subscription upon the death of Sherlock Holmes. In 1980, both critics of Star Wars fans expressed dissatisfaction with The Empire Strikes Back because it changed what had been established in the previous film. The difference here is that these responses weren't connected to a burgeoning right-wing movement, which is where we find ourselves today. There it is. There it is. Right there. Is this article by Blair? You know it's by Blair, says Pool Magic. I love the fact that he called it out immediately. He's like, this must be an Andrew Blair article. It's definitely an Andrew Blair article. Dude, it's sad. It's sad. First off, the dissatisfaction with The Empire Strikes Back. I don't recall there being a huge movement that was angry at The Empire Strikes Back. The Empire Strikes Back is hailed as one of the greatest sequels of all time, if not the greatest sequel of all time. Over any course of any movie, any franchise, any property, whatever it is. So I think that he is trying to. I'm sure that there were people out there who were a little like peeved about some things, like little nitpicky things. But otherwise, The Empire Strikes Back is largely hailed as one of the greatest sequels of all time. And I feel like he's kind of reaching here for an example, for an excuse. Lord of the Rings has already been co-opted by the far right. See, there it is. Now, all of a sudden, it is an us versus them type of feeling that he's trying to pull out here. I may have cheated, though. I read your articles first. Oh. Hey, but you know what? Good on you for reading the articles. So he's already trying to bring this into a political sphere of us versus them. Now it's the far right, the alt-right, the extreme right versus normal people. Normal people like this whole change thing. We normal people are all about the wokeification of Lord of the Rings or Star Wars or, the Wheel of Time or this or that. They're all about it. Not those far right guys. Those far right guys are trying to make this into a big deal. This is where all the critics are coming from, the far right. And if you're not far right, then you won't be critical of this Lord of the Rings. Tolkien, despite Tolkien being on record as hating apartheid, British and American imperialism in the Far East, raging against Nazis, and their interpretation of his woke work as an Aryan allegory, when he was asked by German publishers in 1938 if they could translate The Hobbit. But Tolkien was told this was conditional on his proving that he had Aryan blood and no Jewish ancestry. His reply was withering. This has continued to be the case. So here's what we just saw from Blair. What he basically just did was automatically talk about the far right and how the Lord of the Rings anger is basically just far right nonsense, but that this has been happening for some time because Nazis and Tolkien hated Nazis and stuff, and he's always been fighting against the far right bastardization of his work. Trying to knit these two together. In 1970s Italy, there was a Hobbit summer camp run by a burgeoning right-wing movement who marketed themselves as not your father's fascists. A sense of traditionalism, of restoring the apparently glorious past, drove them and connected them to Tolkien's work. And unfortunately for Tolkien, there are parallels to be made. He is a Tolkien fan, but he just wants to constantly point out how Tolkien was a national. Like there's just so many things wrong with Tolkien. Apparently, that's why we gotta wokeify it, folks. We gotta correct the mistakes that Tolkien made. Even though Tolkien was a great guy, I would never question Tolkien, but he was kind of a racist. Fans of Tolkien include Gianluca Casseri and Anders Breivik, both racially motivated murderers, and Varg Vikernes, a black metal musician, murderer, and anti-Semite and scientific racist, i.e. someone who misapplies science to support their racism. So he is bringing up the fact that the far right is critical of this change to the Lord of the Rings. Then he just starts to list, like, just throw stuff against the wall. There were murderers who were racially motivated. There were fascists and Nazis and la da 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 da, and it's all it's all far right stuff. Just like then, it is today. You are reaching, bro. First off, to sit there and say that the right the right is anything like the fascists of old, like the Nazis of old. The right has been anti-racism from the beginning. I want to remind everybody that the Republican Party in particular was founded to help free the slaves. That was like one of the first things they did. The right was trying to free the slaves. The left was trying to keep them right there where they, where they had them for so long. Not a lot of people, like, this has been covered up by history, but it was the right that was primarily helping along the civil rights movement. Equality and equality of opportunity has always been a right-leaning ordeal. And it doesn't matter if you are a woman, doesn't matter if you're black, it doesn't matter if you're purple dot, polka dot, it doesn't matter. That has been one of the founding principles of the right. He is trying to say, well, the right, they're the ones who are mad here. And remember the far right? The fascists and the murderers and racism and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, this is all them. Reaching. You are reaching, Blair. Given its previous connections with fascism and the response to Peter Jackson's films, it's sadly not surprising to see the Lord of the Rings fandom engage in culture war campaigns. Since at least 2014 and Gamergate. There it is, boys. We got to throw Gamergate out there. We have to. What's up, Delacroix? The Hitler drank water too argument? Absolutely. If Hitler drank water and you drink water, what does that say about you? What's up, Lord Jim? It's the same lazy trope. Oh, yeah. Absolutely, it's the same lazy trope. Good thing for his case that there was no murderers who liked Wizard of Oz. You can't like Wizard of Oz now, guys. That's racist. So Gamergate. Let me go ahead and lay out the thing. Well, no, I'm going to finish this first, and then I'm going to tell you all about Gamergate, for those of you who don't know what it is. Since at least 2014 in Gamergate, there has been momentum that has been built through different fandoms. There was overlap between Gamergate and the Sad/Rabid Puppies voting campaigns at the Hugo Awards of 2015 and 2016. Though Gamergate was chaotic and unfocused in comparison, both groups were united by their hatred for media with a progressive political message and a perceived bias toward non-white male creators. There was also a sense that they were losing control of their genres, with gaming, science fiction, and fantasy being no longer seen as uniquely appealing to straight white men. Okay, this is a complete mischaracterization of Gamergate. And this is not surprising me. Gamergate, for those of you who don't know what it is, back in 2014, 2015, there was a situation where it was revealed that news media for the gaming press was giving out really good reviews to games that didn't deserve them because of personal relationships that had went undisclosed. There was a call for the games press to actually disclose these relationships with game developers, and they refused to do it. They fought back, and they started making accusations left and right of sexism, racism. It happened because this woman named Zoe Quinn was actually sleeping with Nathan Grayson, or was it Nathan? I forget his name now. Nathan something. I think it's Nathan Grayson, who was working, I believe, at Kotaku at the time. and she had a sexual relationship with him, and he was giving her game, Depression Quest, great reviews. Now, if you've ever played Depression Quest, it's horrible. It's absolutely god-awful. Yet, she was still getting great reviews. But even if it was good, it wouldn't matter. The point is that you had someone who was getting good reviews because of non-disclosed personal relationships, meaning that there was something corrupt happening in the background, and all we wanted was for there to be a sense of normalcy, of honor, of ethics, if you will, in the gaming press. Well, that turned into a big social justice battle as the gaming press decided to turn around and start accusing everyone who wanted that of sexism and racism and yada, yada, yada. They tried to attribute Gamergate to being a far-right movement full of Nazis and fascists and wannabe white supremacists. But if you actually went over the people who were taking part, and it was all male patriarchy dominated, yada, yada, yada. If you look back at who was taking part in Gamergate, you would see it was basically a buyer's movement, where like the identity of those involved were across the board: men, women, black, white, Mexican, didn't matter where. They wanted it all. They all wanted the same thing, and not just shallow reasons, like shallow things like race and sex. I'm talking about ideologically different too, coming together as one. Both Republicans and Democrats were a part of Gamergate, and they worked together. And that is something that the leftist press could not stand. They couldn't wrap their heads around it. To this very day, and here is a good example right here, to this very day, you will find them writing, these hard left journalists, writing about Gamergate almost nonstop. I swear at least once a month, someone releases an article from one of these places like Den of Geeks, Kotaku, something, where they are disparaging Gamergate. New York Times not too long ago actually went and did an entire retrospective on it with the Gamergate's antagonists like Brianna Wu. But he is mischaracterizing this movement, this Gamergate movement, in order to make it seem like, okay, well, now that this racist and sexist Gamergate movement has had its day, the tradition continues. Now we have the Lord of the Rings, the woke of the rings, getting lambasted because of the sexism and racism that Gamergate set the standard for. This guy is reaching. He's trying so hard to put sexism and racism and bigotry on critics where there isn't any, and he is looking for every excuse he is pulling everything out of his bag and just throwing it against the wall to see what sticks at this point. It is the equivalent of flailing your fists in a fight. What's up, Crippen? Yes, worrying about journalism ethics is a terrible thing, aka Gamergate. Yeah, we shouldn't. Yeah, exactly. It should be. It's something that should just be like, yes, actually, we're going to adopt new ways of doing things because we don't want to be corrupt. We want to actually we want you to trust us. We want the readers to trust us. But instead, back in the days of Gamergate, when it first came up, you had articles being released almost simultaneously from various gaming websites, basically saying, no, not basically, flat out saying, gamers don't have to be your audience anymore. It's like, yes, you do. We are the ones who read this stuff. We are the ones you are reporting to. We just want to trust you more. And you're saying, well, we can do whatever we want. Okay, then we won't read you. And that was apparently a big fight that needed to be had. So Gamergate was an alt-right movement. Damn, now I got to cancel my membership. I know. How disappointed are we, us, super racist and sexist, conservative, Republican, libertarian, and whatever you want to call us. It's ridiculous. I'll probably forget, but still good to see you, Treest. Yeah, welcome to, welcome Brady. Welcome, Treest. And he's just going to start reaching for more examples. The feeling further solidified around the 2016 Ghostbusters Reboot, a film that established a new continuity with female leads rather than revisiting old characters, due largely to Bill Murray's reluctance to... Before the film's release, there was a coordinated effort to harm its marketing and internet presence by downvoting trailers and listings. Leslie Jones left Twitter due to racist and sexist abuse she received. Critics could point to dissatisfaction with reboots of popular properties. Certainly the 2012 Total Recall and 2014 RoboCop took a lot of flack. But it's noticeable how much this ramped up when the leads of the film weren't white men. It's not, again, mischaracterization of what happened. I remember when the 2016 Ghostbusters reboot came out, many people were like, first off, why do we need an all-female reboot? This is blatantly political. And then as people went and saw the movie, they left. And I have watched so many people be critical of movies, then go in and be like, okay, it actually wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. Or here are the positives. People walked into 2016 Ghostbusters Reboot after the fighting had occurred online before it was released and came out and said, wow, all of my fears were confirmed. This is a garbage movie. And there are videos on videos on videos of critics not talking about the political aspects of it, showing you exactly why and how this movie was complete and total garbage. One of my favorite things about the a video that was released that was analyzing the comedy of the original Ghostbusters versus the 2016 Ghostbusters, and you saw how much better the comedy was executed in the original Ghostbusters versus the really try-hard types of comedy that they had in the 2016. But before that even happened, the reason people were mad wasn't just because it was women. It was women for political reasons, but you also had Leslie Jones and other people who were working on the movie come out and talk trash to the fans who were raising legitimate concerns, accusing them of being sexist and racist. And instead of backing down, these fans fought back. And they can't stand it. And now, do I think that Leslie Jones did get some racist and sexist comments on Twitter? Yes, it's Twitter. There's a lot of anonymity on Twitter. So I have no doubt that there was some idiot going, yeah, I'm going to say something racist, just to get a rise out of people, because there are trolls out there. But it is the internet. And you could take a totally normal guy, introduce anonymity and distance and safety, and he will turn into a complete... South Park made an entire season about it. If that tells you... Some people like leave normal lives. They get on and they get online and they release their frustrations by being racist and sexist. I get messages all the time that are nasty. You know what I do? I shrug it off because it's the internet and Twitter isn't a real place. Quote Dave Chappelle. So this is complete nonsense. The recent Star Wars trilogy also had similar campaigns waged against it. The Force Awakens was criticized for Rey, the new lead, being a Mary Sue, which resulted in a response suggesting double standards for female leads and male leads. But it's true. She was a Mary Sue. She had no character development, and she completely overshadowed any talent or any importance any other character had in that movie. I could go on for ages about the Star Wars sequels, just the worst. He talks about how Kelly Marie Tran was also kind of had the Leslie Jones treatment. The Last Jedi was put down because sexism, racism, the typical stuff. Interestingly, bringing things back to the quote that's being used to span the new Lord of the Rings series, that aforementioned Tolkien quote, "Evil is not able to create anything new. It can only distort and destroy what has been invented or made by the forces of good." For those of you who don't want to scroll back up. Looking back over this potted history of entitled fan reactions, it is not entitled. The fans are not entitled. The fans are the soul of the freaking franchise, bro. They're not entitled. They understand it better than anybody. So when you piss off the fans, chances are you've done something wrong, and maybe you should listen to them. You know what happens when you listen to the fans and they actually like what you do? You succeed. There is a reason that the go woke, go broke thing has become almost best practices. Look at what happened to Sonic the Hedgehog. Sonic the Hedgehog, they released a character that was it was ghastly. Oh, God. For the new Sonic the Hedgehog movie, released a character that was just disgustingly, it was weird. Let's just say that. It was weird. And fans responded by saying, dude, this isn't Sonic. This is horrible. This is like a travesty. What the hell, man? You know what they did? They went back in and they remade Sonic to make him look like he did in the video games. And you know what happened? Boom, movie succeeded. The fans were all about it. They were happy that they got listened to. Listen to the fans. Gamergate didn't want the perception of fandom to change for games to change. That wasn't it. The sick puppies wanted science fiction and fantasy to remain static. That's not it either. And right-wing Tolkien fans are harking back to a mythic version of the past because they don't like the present. No, we don't like the present, but at the same time, if you try to bring that present into a story that does not need to be modernized, and you destroy the logic of that world, you are going to make people angry. Because it stops being Lord of the Rings, yet you're still slapping the name on it. You cannot blame people for not liking that. If you had a favorite dish at a restaurant and you walked in there and one day you find out that they changed up your favorite dish and it no longer tastes the way that it did before, you would be a little sad and maybe a little upset. Especially if you've been coming to this restaurant for years and years and years. Every year you come back. Maybe you come back to it, once a month even, or more. Who knows? But you keep going back for this one dish. It is your favorite thing, and they change it. Now it's bland, or it doesn't taste as good as it used to. It doesn't have that same kick, that same fire. You'd be mad. The same rule applies to the Lord of the Rings or any franchise. And you come and you bastardize it, you corrupt it, you pervert it. People are going to get mad, and they're calling people who get mad about it entitled. How entitled do you have to be to think that you can decide what is and isn't good about a franchise that the fans know better about? How entitled are you that you literally write an article titled, "Why Fandom Has to Embrace Change"? The responses are destroying the ability to converse about art. What art? There's no art here. This is politics. This isn't art. This is politics, and you know it. It's becoming harder to have a discussion about the constant thrumming discourse permeating every exchange. Not our fault. That's your fault. You're the one who started the conversation. Merely mentioning the 2016 Ghostbusters films means the inevitable arrival nearly 6 years on of someone to aggressively dismiss it, because it deserves to be aggressively dismissed. It was a horrible movie based around the politics of the day. You'd think having got a new film in the original continuity that responses might calm down a bit. But if such behavior has got them what they wanted, then why would they stop there? Yes, absolutely. We're going to fight for what we think is right. You're mad that we're fighting back. That we're actually raising a stink. That we're not showing up to watch your woke garbage nonsense. Why should we? Why should we go see it? Why should we give you money for it? The tactics of spamming and overwhelming conversation have been in place for some time now, and we should stop pretending that everything's fine just because Fandom has the odd, cute story about someone crocheting a rancor beast. There is a significant portion of the fandom who are not in a position to be reasoned with. Report them, block them, move on. Don't engage. Again, don't engage. You will find many of these people do not want to debate at all. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to talk to you. They have their bubble, and they want their bubble to remain very static and very strong and unmolested. You have to understand that many of these hard left arguments, they only exist in a vacuum. They can only exist in a vacuum. If you introduce anything in it that would actually, challenge their narrative, the narrative starts to fall apart instantly. They do not allow. This is why AOC does not debate. People like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez do not debate. She has a fantasy, and if you start to inject right in front of her any of this and she can't answer it, or she has to go off on a tangent that kind of makes no sense in regards to the question, the narrative starts to fall apart. The same thing it's been happening forever. Back in Gamergate, people would be like, hey, let's debate about this. And they said, we're not going to engage with you. because it's a waste of time. Don't get me wrong. I don't engage in every single internet argument myself. I mean, that would be stupid. It would be a waste of time. I'd be doing nothing but arguing and I get nothing done. But there are big debates that should be able to happen. You should be able to defend yourself in the court of public opinion. And if you cannot win the day with logic and reason, then maybe your idea is a bad one. And they understand that fact. And that's why they're saying, don't just block them. Block them. Don't even talk to them. They cannot create anything new, only distort and destroy what we already have. Rich. He talks about self-awareness right here, which is freaking... That is a quote being used, would be a massive self-own if it weren't for the fact that this requires self-awareness, and yet he says they cannot create anything new, only distort and destroy what they already have. His side is injecting modernity into Lord of the Rings, and we're the ones. Unreal. These people are out of their minds. Out of their minds. Fun fact, Ghostbusters 2016 was originally billed as being in the original universe. Yeah, originally. Thank God they stopped that. It's no wonder leftists do so good in Hollywood. Masters of living in fantasy worlds. Well, you know what? Jones is remarkably unfunny. She really is. Her entire character was screaming in that movie. It's just everything was screamed. Getting louder doesn't make you funnier. Just so you guys understand that. That was actually one of the things that they talked about whenever I was in. I went to improv classes for a while. I love improv. And one of the things they were saying was like getting hyperactive and getting louder is like people in their minds think that just makes you funnier, but it's not true. Like that's not real comedy. You're just getting loud. You're just getting more noticeable. You know? Can it make you seem a little sillier? Yeah, but it's not actually, it doesn't substitute for actual comedy. That's one of the things they said, and Jones, like throughout 2016 Ghostbusters, was just like this. All right. But we're not allowed to dislike her. We're not allowed to dislike her acting. And even if Leslie Jones wasn't being a poor human being, even if the comedy was amazing, they disrespected the memories of the original characters by having their actors back in bad ways. Absolutely. It was a bastardization of Ghostbusters. It wasn't Ghostbusters. It wasn't. Now for a Pac-Man movie like Sonic. Dude, they have, like, one of the creepiest things I've ever seen is like the remakes of realistic Pac-Man. It's horrible. Like he looks creepy when he's been realisticalized. That's not a word, but it is now. If we're sick puppies, are we allowed to vomit on his property violently? Go for it. Some of them might be into that. Self-awareness is not a leftist trait. It's look, we all suffer a little bit from our bias. It's true. We all do. Sometimes it makes us look like idiots. It's inevitable. It's going to happen. These people, you could literally shove. They could go on a campaign where they're like, the sky is green. The sky is green. You could be outside standing there with them, pointing, like grabbing the back of their head and pointing it like, look, no, look, it's blue. And they would call you a racist for saying that. I know I put a pic of realistic Pac-Man on you. Yeah, you did. You did actually do that. But the politicalization, this kind of, now that I've had that rant, I want to go and move into this. Netflix turns the wokeness up to 11 with the race and gender swap in a show about Vikings. For those of you who never watched Vikings, it was like a History Channel show that they had out for a while, and it was pretty good. I never finished it, but I mean, yeah, it was decent. So Netflix decided, hey, if it worked, if people are watching it, then surely we can actually buy the property and we can make our own version of Vikings, you know, using that same in-world feel to it, but we could wokeify it a little bit. And people love it. Again, they took a property that wasn't necessarily woke at all, and they are going to woke. They're going to inject politics in it because it is necessary for them to normalize their nonsense. The left's control of the big stage has come with many issues, namely the fact that it's run out of ideas and must rely on previously established IPs. By the way, this is up at redstate.com right now. Franchises and characters. And like the stream if you haven't yet. Be sure to like the stream. Press it right now. and characters that can be remade and retooled for modern audiences. Those who control the big stage are hell-bent on inserting their political values into everything from Ghostbusters to Lord of the Rings. One of the increasingly common injections is the gender or race swap. There are many cases when this matters little, but there are times when it absolutely does, and when people point this out, they're deemed as racists, despite not making any points disparaging races at all. So in this article, I want to go over why you pointing out that the race swap is ridiculous is not racist. They're going to try to call you racist and tell you that you're a horrible person. You're not. The most infamous example thus far was the race swapping of Queen Anne Boleyn by the BBC, who decided to put black actress Jodie Turner-Smith in the role as King Henry VIII's second wife. When the showrunners were asked why they did this, their only reasoning was that the actress and I misspelled that, and Anne Boleyn were a lot alike personality-wise, sidestepping the elephant in the room. Now, Netflix has decided to take its turn in generating a wildly out-of-place race swap in its new show Vikings Valhalla. The character in question is the Viking king Jarl Hakon Sigurdsson. The actor they got to play him? Well, for starters, it's a she, and the she in question is black Danish singer Carolyn Henderson. In short, the Viking king is a black queen. I don't know what to say at this point. That I haven't already said at least. So many people are like, they wanted to bypass the idea that this is political. They don't want to talk about it as political. They want to frame it as something else. But director of the God of War Ragnarok narrative director Matt Sophos already kind of let the cat out of the bag one day. He noted that when the trailer revealed the Norse Jotun Angrboda would be portrayed by a black girl, he confessed that the move was absolutely political. He said, as a writer, your job is to tell stories that are compelling and relatable. You bring pieces of yourself to stories and your opinions shine through. So writing is always political. It's just usually only called that if the politics aren't agreed with. That's not true. I think that many people, whenever they go to find their escapism, the last thing they actually want is to bring politics into it. You know, if somebody injected conservative politics into Lord of the Rings, or I shouldn't say conservative, like they conservative talking points, you know, like, you know, they're making points about the border through Lord of the Rings. I'd be like, dude, I want a good Lord of the Rings story. Can we not do the politics, please? I'm here to get away from there. But the injection of politics is unnecessary in the first place. And again, if the race swapping were reversed with a white actor portraying a popularly black character, there would be endless outrage. The race swapping only goes one way. It's a political pandering at its worst. But as black culture critic Eric July once noted, this pandering is insulting to the black community, calling these race swaps of established white characters, quote, hand-me-downs. White folks saying we already developed... Excuse me, I forgot to bring water up. We already developed this character for decades. Merchandise is out there. Generations of people have grown up understanding who this character was. Now, we can pass this character to you, even though everybody knows it originally ain't you. Good point by July, in my opinion. I think it's really interesting that you have these white directors, these white writers, these white producers trying to pat themselves on the back and get others to pat themselves on the back by taking a character that is pre-established to be white, making them into a different race, and then saying, like, trying to almost look at themselves as if they're a hero about it. You know, that they're normalizing anti-white supremacy and stuff like that. That's what they think they're doing. But really what they are doing is exactly as July said. This is them almost kind of like, hey, we've already used this for a long time. Why don't you take it? It's a hand-me-down. Instead of going out and creating new characters, new dynamic characters of different races, creeds, sexual preferences, and all that stuff, instead, they are taking pre-established characters, turning them on their head, completely making them into something that they're not, and then expecting us to go, it's not the story. It's not the story. It's not the logic of the world. You have turned it on its head, and now it's not the story that it once was. It has nothing to do with racism. It has nothing to do with sexism. It just doesn't fit. Again, the helicopter in 1400s Bohemia, it doesn't fit. It breaks the logic. Woke business has no business injecting itself into art, but it does so at the behest of those who believe we need to be saved from some moral failing we all share. According to social justice advocates, we're all racist, sexist, and bigoted, and we need to have their politics normalized within our culture in order to break the curse. Their thought is that if white characters are erased and replaced in popular media, that this will somehow cure our society of racism. Yet, the racism seems to be flowing from the woke in great wafts, and they're not practicing much self-awareness in noticing it. They attack white people as solely responsible for the racism and, as a result, erasing white people from popular media or adding black characters in roles where they clearly are out of place, and that becomes the rule. That is racism, full stop. You cannot sit there and blanket accuse an entire race of being racism or being responsible for racism in a country. You can't. That is racism. You are broad brushing an entire race of people as guilty for something that they never did. And by they never did, the sins of the father do not necessarily transmit to the son. You are not guilty of racism unless you are a racist and an open and avowed racist. If your great-great-grandfather owned slaves and was horrible to them, that does not mean that you yourself are a racist. You are not responsible for what your great-great-grandfather did. Period. And yet you have the woke culture saying, white people are guilty. All of them. They're guilty of spreading the patriarchy, the white patriarchy. I hear it all the time. White supremacy, we're all guilty of it. If you were a Trump supporter, I remember CNN, I think it was Don Lemon. He was out there talking about how if you were a white Trump supporter, then you're the greatest threat this country has ever seen. He was either Don Lemon or Chris Cuomo. I don't care who. One of them's gone anyway. Is that not racist? Because if it were reversed and we were trying to say something like that, blanket blame an entire race of people, doesn't matter who they were, we would be called a racist for doing that. But they do it and they're heroic. And now they feel like they need to pull white characters out and replace them with characters of a different ethnicity, doesn't matter what, whether or not it fits. There comes a point where the race swapping becomes a bit ridiculous and stupid and blatantly political. And pointing it out is okay. You're not a racist for doing that. Ugh. These people, man. Oh my God, the Pac-Man is creepy. Oh, you saw the Pac-Man in the Discord? Where did you post it to? I you know what? I would show the crowd. I just don't. I know that there's some channels in my Discord that aren't exactly. Hang on, let me see if I can't find it. Where did you put it? Was it in general? I can't remember. Here, send me a link if anyone finds it. Young Rippa ripping their narrative apart as usual. Dude, I love Young Rippa. He's cool. Eric July, he's awesome. Go check out his YouTube channel. It's like the Batman. They use corruption as an analogy for racism. Oh, I haven't seen the Batman yet. We were supposed to see it yesterday, but we had to go to dinner. We had a dinner that we completely forgot about that we'd scheduled in. So I haven't seen it yet. One of the public ones. I'll have to look later. I don't want to go digging through it. I'm not gonna put the entire show on hold just for like a Pac-Man picture. Although I do want to see it. In Maymay's? Oh, it's in Maymay's? All right, hang on. Let's look in Maymay's. Oh God. Okay. Okay. I'd have to open up a whole nother window for it now that I think about it. Look, just if you're not a part of my Discord already, go to my Discord. We don't do politics in there, but just know that it's there if you want to see like a really creepy version of Pac-Man. Thank you. Yeah, go follow that link. Go follow that link. All right. Now that we've complained enough about nerdiness, I've only got like 10, 20 minutes left. The Biden-Harris attack on the new Florida abortion law shows how much the left fears Ron DeSantis. So to give you guys some background on this, abortion is under attack in this country, and thank God for that. Abortion is horrible, in my honest opinion. You might have, your mileage may vary, but I am not a fan of abortion. I really do consider it murder. I do. And state after state after state after state has been passing these laws that effectively make abortion almost impossible. Florida has done it as well now. Texas did it. You had Mississippi do it. It's all these places are starting to kind of come down on abortion really, really hard. And Florida is one of the latest ones, and they are flipping out. Like they always do, like they did with Texas, but they are flipping out in this one in particular. Last Thursday, the Florida legislature passed a bill closely modeled on Mississippi's law that bans abortion after 15 weeks. While the bill should not have shocked anyone, the White House response was quick and extreme. President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris Friday condemned Florida legislation that would restrict abortion after 15 weeks. Quote, last night, the Republican-controlled Florida legislature passed a dangerous bill that will severely restrict women's access to reproductive health care. My administration will not stand for the continued erosion of women's constitutional rights. Dun, dun, dun. Biden said on Twitter following the Florida Senate's passage of the bill, which is expected to be signed by Republican Governor Ron DeSantis. Vice President Kamala Harris, the first woman to hold her role, issued her own statement later in the day that called the Florida legislation unconstitutional in anticipation of coming court fights. The Florida bill follows on an even more aggressive law passed by Texas last year that restricts abortion after just 6 weeks. The right of women to make decisions about their own bodies is non-negotiable. If signed into law, Florida's bill would violate the constitutional right to abortion that the Supreme Court has recognized for nearly 50 years. It will block access to crucial reproductive health care. I hate that word. That is such a stupid word. Reproductive health care. And then they kill a baby. It's so stupid. It's so stupid. It will block access to crucial reproductive health care for Floridians with a particular impact on low-income communities, communities of color, and rural communities, Harris said in a statement. She's not wrong. It will impact them because Planned Parenthood primarily targets black neighborhoods of color. That's where they primarily put their stuff. They target these. That's where they build. They target these communities. They open up clinics in these communities. So she's not wrong. They want to kill. They seem to want to kill a lot of black babies, which is pretty evil. Harris speaks during a cancer moonshot event in the East Room of the White House Friday, February 2nd, 2022. In Washington, Alex Brandon, AP, unconstitutional abortion bans and other bills that will dramatically reduce access to reproductive care. There's that word again, are pending in state legislature across the country. These efforts only strengthen our resolve. The Biden-Harris administration, they're back to that? I thought they took the Harris out of the Biden-Harris administration. They're going back to that now? Goodness. We'll continue to do everything in our power to protect access to health care and defend a woman's right to make decisions about her body and determine her future. Which portion of the Constitution grants the right of murder again? It's the one. That one. Red. That part of the Constitution. You don't know it? That's dumb. You're dumb. What makes this reaction so unusual is that the past 6 months have seen a blizzard of pro-life laws pass, many of which are much more severe than Florida's law. Just 2 days earlier, West Virginia passed a 15-week abortion bill. Idaho has passed a law modeled on the Texas heartbeat law. So has Wisconsin. But I can't imagine it getting past the governor's veto. In fact, some 5,000 to 600 abortion restrictive laws have been passed in the last year. Yet, it is the Florida law copycatting a law that received a favorable hearing in the Supreme Court that Biden-Harris decided to get excited about? That's strange. Why would they be focusing on Florida's law when there are much more extreme laws going on in other states? It's a good question to ask. I think this has to be viewed through the lens of 2022 and 2024. Strife wrote this, by the way, and it's he's always great. His articles are always on spot on. Right now, Ron DeSantis is a boogeyman to the left because he's smart. He surrounded himself with smart and aggressive people, and he knows which fights to pick and with whom. The 3 days of rage over DeSantis telling a group of students wearing masks that they were participating in COVID theater. See, and annoyed DeSantis tells the students they can remove their masks. We already covered that on a previous episode. Show what kind of obsession the left has with him. The attack on Florida's abortion law is being used as a tool by the Democrats to try to spin up interest within their voting base for 2022. Showing Joey Softserve is doing something, quote unquote, about the right to murder babies will, they hope, distract from his unbroken series of failures and everything else he has touched. Also, DeSantis has been seen as a leading contender for the 2024 GOP nomination. It is never too early to start roughing him up as a kind of ogre who wants to send women back to the alleys with a rusty coat hanger to take care of business. This is a really good... I 110,000% believe that that's true. Because if they have much more extreme, like anti-abortion stuff going on in other states, but they're focusing on DeSantis, it tells you that DeSantis is a legitimate threat and they want to start directing fire completely at him. Because if they can start doing it now, then he's weaker going into 2024. It seems that the Democrats then are very convinced that he is going to run for president, and that if he does run for president, they could very well lose, and they probably will lose to Ron DeSantis. Ron DeSantis has done a lot to gin up a lot of favorability, not just with conservatives, but voters in general. He's been on the forefront of the anti-mask legislation, on the forefront of the opening up legislation. Not freaking out over COVID. He is the antithesis to what they on the left consider a good governor. And the people have decided that Ron DeSantis is actually a great governor. And that, more people should be under his watch than anyone else. That's why so many people are leaving blue states and they're moving to places like Florida. They consider him a massive threat, which is why they're focusing in. And they should consider him a massive threat. And here's the other thing. Many governors and red state leaders or red city leaders or red community leaders need to be looking at Ron DeSantis and going, I want to be just like him when I grow up. Because he's clearly got the right idea. He's clearly helping out. He's clearly making his state better. Period. I liked a video I saw a couple of years ago where someone called PP locations across the country looking for their so-called healthcare services, and most of them weren't actually offering it because they're not. They don't even offer mammograms. Planned Parenthood has been their primary export is abortion. Period. It might make up 3%, as they say, of their business, but that 3% is where the vast majority of their money revolves around. You don't go to Planned Parenthood for gumballs. And lately, now that abortion is starting to take a back seat, they're shifting. They're now shifting their business model. Now, you can go in there and get hormone replacement treatments. And there have been reports, and I wrote about this a while back, of, gangs of girls, like they're going to the mall to get their ears pierced. Gangs of girls who walk in there and they ask them these questions. They fill out these forms. And these questions they ask them are very shallow. It's not, are you sure you want to do this? It's, why are you doing this? It's like, it's almost encouraging. And they get hormone shots to make them stop being girls and start being boys. Of course, that can't happen because biology is biology. I'm going to get kicked off of YouTube now. But that's what they're doing. That's the business model they're moving to. Planned Parenthood has done nothing but push left-wing politics on the populace. And they have been using our tax dollars by the hundreds of millions to do it. That is just truth. In the penumbra. It's in the penumbra. That's where it is. Federalist number 8669B. How much time I got left? 9 minutes? 10 minutes. I'm going to skip this dick. I don't like this guy. Black people can't stand AOC. Another interesting article that I came across made by Jeff Charles, one of our writers here, who is also really awesome. And apparently, according to a latest poll, I'm just going to go over this real fast. I'm not going to read the whole entire thing, but I think you should go in and read it because it's very interesting. According to a latest poll, many black people just are not fans of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. They are not fans of hard left politics, as it turns out. What does that tell you? I think that you have this. What this article made me start to think about. I think that there was the hard left politics in this country kind of came about because people were fooled into believing it. And this goes kind of back to the woke Lord of the Rings, this wokeness that they injected. They hate her because they want to date her. What? Dude, I am that girl crazy. I ain't touching that. No one should touch that. And I think many people are starting to get it. It's like, dude, she ain't right. I think that many people are starting to really wake up to the fact that this craziness from the hard left is, in fact, craziness. And they're starting to walk away from it. They can't take it anymore. And I think that many people who do want to do that, whether they, any person of color or anything like that, are starting to walk away and no one's talking about it. The Republicans around the second election, like even the first election of Trump, but black favorability amongst Republicans went up, right? In terms of Republican politics. Now, is it majority? No, not even by a long shot. But it's starting to have an uptrend. And I think that people are starting to walk away from the hard left. But it seems to me that the black community is looking at AOC and people like her nah, that's crazy. I'm not doing that. That's what this poll tells me. Now, you're not going to hear about this poll for some reason. I don't know why. Your guess is as good as mine. Wink, wink. But I mean, I think that we're being lied to by the media. I think that they are trying, I know. They are trying to insert a narrative about groups because they like to fit groups in boxes. And one of the groups that they have tried to put in boxes for forever is the black community. And according to the Democrats, if you were to ask them, the black community is completely on board with whatever they say. You ain't black if you don't vote for Joe Biden. Remember that? If you don't vote for Joe Biden, you ain't black. It was a slip of the tongue by Joe Biden, but you know what? Sometimes a slip of the tongue is like just the Freudian slips, But Joe Biden wasn't thinking clearly. He hasn't been thinking clearly for a very long time. And he said something out loud. He said the quiet part out loud. Yes, PSA, the news isn't your friend. They are not a service. They are a business. Their business right now is pushing leftist politics. They're not going to talk about this. They're not going to say that, that the leader of the hard left right now, the unofficial leader of the hard left, AOC, is not really supported by black people. They're not going to talk about that. Last thing. Again, all these are up at redstate.com right now. I'm kind of rapid firing through them. Go read them yourself. Justin Trudeau delivers a bizarre and revealing rant on democracy. I have some things to say about this. But first, we're just going to go ahead and let him speak for himself. How about that?
And we've come to a moment that, quite frankly, we've seen coming over the past years. And we've talked about it
I like his little Ukraine ribbon. He cares, guys.
In the news, not just about Ukraine, but about democracies around the world, that we see a bit of a slippage in our democracies. Countries turning towards slightly more authoritarian leaders.
Come on, bro. Justin Trudeau is speaking out against authoritarian leaders is the pot calling the kettle black. This is the guy who tried to unleash the law on a peaceful protest. And I mean really crack down on these people. Really cracked it. And now he's all talking about authoritarianism over here. Also, one thing, we're not a democracy. Democracies all over the world. True democracy is horrible. We are a constitutional republic. But I can guarantee you right now he's talking about Canada. He's talking about Western countries right now in their march toward authoritarianism. The whole point of the trucker protest that happened the freedom protest was because this guy right here, this idiot, was trying to put mandates on people that they A, didn't want, or B, didn't need. The whole thing happened because he was trying to expand his power and keep an authoritarian, draconian grip on the people, and they weren't having it. And they let him have it. He had to flee the Capitol. Not because they were getting violent, not because they were being bad, but because it was clear whose side Canada was on. And he didn't want to be around it. I mean, they were right outside his front door. He didn't want to look at it. And the media tried to lie about it. They tried to make it seem like they were violent, racist, sexist, yada, yada. Again, the same stuff over and over. They're always going to throw the same stuff at you over and over and over and over and over again. All these accusations that are baseless in order to protect the narrative. It is rich to me that this authoritarian is denouncing authoritarianism and making it seem like, no, I'm a freedom-loving individual. All these people are embracing, and these democracies are embracing authoritarian individuals. Have you looked in a mirror again? This guy is nuts.
Countries allowing increasing
takes one to know one. Yeah.
Disinformation to be shared on social media, turning people against the values and the principles of democracies that are so strong.
Misinformation. I hate that word now. It's such a stupid word. Misinformation, what it really means for those of you who aren't up on it, it really just means something that questions the leftist narrative, is what that means. If it is inconvenient to the left's narrative, then that is misinformation. It doesn't matter whether it's actually true or not, what you're saying. Again, you could say something along the lines of masks are pretty much just facial decoration at this point. They're not really stopping the virus from transmitting from person to person. It's almost like putting up a chain link fence in order to stop mosquitoes from coming in. It does not work. You can say that and have proof. And there has been proof after proof after proof after proof after proof. You had Liana Wynn, who is CNN's resident medical expert, say herself that these masks, unless they are N95 masks, are pretty much facial decoration. These cloth masks that we've been wearing, these surgical masks, hardly stop anything. She said it herself on CNN. And yet, you had so many people coming out and saying, hey, this isn't working. Here's the proof. Here we have all this proof. We're swimming in proof. Well, that's misinformation. Why? Because it's inconvenient to my narrative. So I'm going to label it with that buzzword that you hear over and over and over again, that big bad buzzword that automatically makes you go, oh, don't listen to that. I'm going to label it misinformation. Is it misinformation? No. It's right information. But because it questions my narrative, it is now misinformation. And if you spread misinformation, I'm going to have you banned from social media. I might even try to have you arrested for spreading misinformation. It's a really pretty buzzword created by the left to make people afraid of certain facts and figures and narratives and arguments and debate points. That's all it is. And the first person, like if you're using misinformation in a way to make it seem like the other person is wrong, then chances are you're the one who's actually pushing it. He's a pretty boy. Of course he's looking into mirrors. With rose-colored glasses, no doubt. No joke. Didn't Walensky say over the weekend that the CDC got a lot of their policy ideas from watching CNN? Wait, is that true? I did not catch that. Because if that's the case, then that needs to be highlighted immediately. Oh my God. If that is true, that's... Dude, take CNN off the air. Let's just take it off the air. Good God.
And that
he looks a little tired, doesn't he?
Over the years, unfortunately emboldened Putin. It made him think that he could get away with this, that he could get away with it in Ukraine.
Misinformation helped Putin make that decision. Misinformation is what caused the Ukraine invasion. Oh, wow. Man, you want to talk that is a knockout of the park, my guy. A knockout of the park. You want to talk about propagandizing to the extreme? This guy just said misinformation is what helped Putin invade Ukraine. Good God Almighty. These people, man, they are beyond ridiculous. I hardly have words for it. I hardly have the words for it. But you know what? It's okay. It's not like this one. It's not like, we aren't waking up, and I think that's really the good part about this. I think we are waking up as a society. I think that we're starting to catch on to these people. I think that you're starting to see more and more people speak out and act up against these. I mean, the trucker convoy was definitely one of those times, right? I think that you had a very, I mean, like, and they were finding support all over the world. And as these authoritarians try to push more and more on people, more and more people are striking back. It's one of the reasons that you actually saw Glenn Youngkin win in Virginia and why you saw Terry McAuliffe lose. You see the polls dropping for the Biden administration constantly. Constantly. Dude, the midterms do not look good for these people. And I think it's because they have pushed the Overton window too far over to the left. They have tried, their draconianism has become so overt and so pushed upon the people that people are just finally starting to wake up a little bit. And you can see it in everything, whether it's trucker convoys, whether it's voting out, blue state leaders that have been, entrenched there for forever. You see it in school boards where parents are showing up and running against them and voting people out. You see it in the cities that had defunded police and now people are demanding the police back and that they made a mistake in the first place. You see in San Francisco that they are kicking out city council members left and right because of how woke and how hard left they are. In San Francisco. It's happening. And now you're seeing it even in the backlash to like the Lord of the Rings even. People are starting to wake up to stuff. The previously used excuses and attacks and accusations just are not working anymore against us. They're starting to falter because logic is starting to win through. It was bound to happen at some point in time. You can only attack people in the same way over and over again for so long before finally something catches on and it stops working. People just kind of catch on to how ridiculous and ludicrous you are. You can't hide behind your accusations forever. Eventually you're going to get found out, and they're getting found out now. And I'm very pleased with that. Y'all, that's it for me. Go follow me at the Brandon Morse. Like this stream if you haven't already. Show it to your friends and family. Talk about us. We want more people in here, more people having this conversation with us, having a good time, like, say, Canada. Oh, my God. Brandon, you made the joke. I was thinking Doctor Who, and don't you think she looks tired? Awake Not Woke. Dude, yeah, that episode where he's just like, he kind of drops that on his, the Doctor Who episode with David Tennant. And he goes up to the president or the prime minister's like helper or whatever. And is like, don't you think she looks tired? But he does look a little tired here. He absolutely does. Whether that leads to him getting voted out. If he does, by the way, okay, if he gets voted out because I said that, everyone gives me credit. Everyone gives me credit. And be vehement about it. But follow me at the Brandon Morse. Thank you guys so much for being here. We are going, again, live at 11 o'clock. Oh, well, I should say 12 Eastern. Sorry, Central Time is really the only time zone that matters, just for those of you who don't know. We are going live again at 11 o'clock Central Time. Right here. Once again, be here to join in the conversation. Thank you guys so much for the conversation. Thank you for the subscriptions. Be sure to tell your friends about us. We want more subscriptions. We want more followers. We want more people in this chat room having this conversation. Thank you guys so much once again. I will see you guys on Wednesday.